Plant scientists have been making different kinds of hybrids, blending different types of plants together for long times. Right? Sometimes that was to make a plant a little hardier to withstand winter or drought. Sometimes it was to make something a little bit more resistant to bugs or different types of plant diseases. Other times just to make stuff taste better, like an apple that tastes like a grape. Pretty much everything you buy in the store actually these days is some sort of blend, even if it's just one variety of itself with another to make a super variety. Super varieties, I like that. Sort of taking the best of both worlds, creating something really cool in the result. That's what we're looking at with hybrid clouds. We're taking the best of both worlds, putting them together, and then hopefully shedding some of the negatives on the way. So yeah, that term of the day, hybrid, which could mean lots of different things, but ultimately when we're talking about it, we're talking about one thing plus another thing equaling more than the two of them individually combined, right? We're looking for a better than total sum. I put it this way because sometimes concepts are best understood when you have to think about how you would explain it to somebody else. And one of the easiest things we all can do in IT, whether you're looking to get into the industry or you've been in it for 30 years, explaining something to the boss. Hybrid cloud, hybrid, more than just 1 + 1 = 2. We want 2.1, 2.3. If we can tell the boss that 1 + 1 is going to equal 2.5, they'll be letting us throw anything we want at it. Of course, we have to justify that number, but with the hybrid cloud, we do actually have an opportunity to pick up some I'm just going to put a variable right here because I'm not going to commit to anything for your organization. But generally speaking, you're going to get net than if you had a LAN-based data center and what are we talking about? Cloud, right? So if we had a 100% cloud-based solution, we need to find a way of combining these two so that they equal more than just these individual parts summed together. Now, real quick, we're going to take a little aside and we're going to touch on common terms you're going to hear that are synonymous with hybrid. A hybrid is an official term. However, you could absolutely expect to hear things such as combination, split, somewhat accurate usage of the term WAN, wide area network, distributed LAN. That's kind of a whole different thing entirely, but you'll hear that reference to hybrid solutions as well. We're going to keep this real simple, right? Just like we were talking about here. It's LAN plus cloud equals hybrid, of which can be accessed and defined by a whole bunch of different specifics. We don't need to worry about that, especially as it relates to the AZ900. Just understand that this is as far as we need to go in terms of defining what comprises the components of a hybrid cloud. Now, I think defining what that actually looks like from a topology perspective is easiest done when we think about how they come into being in the first place. In the beginning, there was LAN. In some places, LAN was literally a modem, one computer, probably a massive and very noisy printer, and also probably a telephone. And that was the LAN, right? But as we know it here in the 21st century, the local area network is a data center with a bunch of servers in it, probably virtual machines. We also got a whole bunch of local computers that people sit in front of. We also have computers that maybe people don't physically sit in front of. They might be virtual machines on like a vDesk sort of thing, and printers and all kinds of other stuff, right? So we have data center plus, whatever the business local needs are, right? That is our initiation point, our origination point, excuse me. The introduction of the internet, the www, I don't even know why I bother separating those. I can just make one squiggly line and you'll just believe me when I tell you it's 3 W's, right? So the hybrid environment is the coupling of these two ecosystems, and now we have resources of our environment being extended to actually live permanently in that environment, our cloud. Great. Now I need to stress that once an organization began transacting into the cloud space, from the local area network data center space, once there was a conversation over the internet, that didn't necessarily constitute a hybrid organization. They could operate entirely independent of one another, and there wasn't necessarily any cohesive topology, policy, or procedure amongst these organizations, right? Anything you had in just the internet service for a long time, right? A lot of folks that early adopters into the email space, you just had an email account out there in the internet, and you just logged into it, checked your email, and etc. It was completely independent of everything else that you did in the in the business, including even if you had servers and printers and other local area networking equipment. That was, of course, no connection. We have since changed that. This bridge is now a little bit more, or can be a little bit more of a cohesive part of our topology. So there's the definition for hybrid, a cohesive, which is to say somehow in some degree working together topology, which means it's connected. It's all seen as one flowing, moving business entity. That can be very, very little connectivity. It can be as little as a single VPN connection to a host provider out in the cloud. That's all you need to be considered a hybrid entity if this VPN connection and the resources on the other side of it are part of your overarching business cohesive topology. You know I'm getting excited on a topic when this starts looking like all of this. It's terrible. Just a mess. Now, when we want to take our topology and we want to have that integration into the cloud environment, let's say we've already chosen Microsoft. We can skip right over that whole decision-making process. Not really what we're talking about here. We know we have a cloud ecosystem. We know what we want. We want that to be solid and firm. There's a service that we want to talk about. Just as a mention, there's not going to be a lot of technical questions on an exam like the AZ900 about this, but it's an important topic nonetheless. And what we're talking about is the express route. Now, there's a lot of networking mumbo-jumbo in the background of that kind of explains why this is like a super special kind of network connection. But all you really got to understand is that your local internet is provided by someone who owns the actual physical fiber, right? The physical whatever line that's in the streets, hanging over the streets on the aerials, right? This physical line is owned by a company. And that company also connects all of the data centers for everybody, including you, me, and Microsoft. Now, if we would like to ask these companies, and not every company in every region has this available, we can get an express route to Microsoft's data center facilities at this level, which is to say you're not calling up your local internet provider and getting an internet connection and then establishing a connection over the top of it. No, the express route is a bottom sort of thing. It's a layer 2 connection. And then the OSI model, which we use to define our internet, or our networking, there's 1 through 7 layers. So layer 2, that's in the lower end of things. Microsoft exists. They have a physical data center. Of course, everything in Azure ultimately can be connected back to something physically somewhere. And in this case, Microsoft can make those data center physically available to us, directly connecting our personal data center, wherever that may be, hosted in a co-location perhaps even, or just in our building. But we contract, both us and Microsoft, to establish a layer 2 connection between us. A physical connection that is actually terminated at hardware that we control, like a router on our end, and that ends in a layer of Microsoft's networking that has some very specific configuration requirements. If you're familiar with concepts like EIGRP or BGP, then you would know what I'm talking about. If you're not, and this layer 2 stuff sounds intimidating and perhaps maybe a bit more technical than is necessary, you're right. Express route, right? It's just the connection that we're going to use, a physical connection to really solidify that hybrid ecosystem between our data center and our resources on our end and our building and Microsoft's on that end. What we're getting out of this is that these Azure resources that exist on Microsoft's end that normally we have to traverse the www for, we can now connect and access over our own dedicated layer 2 connection. This is faster, a lot faster. Potentially, you have to pay for the bandwidth. And it is also significantly more secure because it's not on the public internet. It is passing through infrastructure that you don't necessarily own, but that infrastructure, for the most part, is buried in a hole. We all already know what the downside of this super awesome service is going to be. The money. It's expensive. It can be very expensive. $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month expensive. Those are just numbers. You, Microsoft, and whoever's providing the third-party layer 2 connection, you guys are going to have to figure out how much this is going to cost. There's installation involved, usually very lengthy contracts because this is a significant service. But again, ExpressRoute is a solution if you want that layer 2 connection to create a hybrid ecosystem that is much more resilient, secure, and fast. I'd love to show you what this ExpressRoute looks like in action, configured on my end, my Azure subscription, but as I mentioned, it's not exactly free. And I can't say that I have a personal need for that level of performance and reliability and security. But some organizations do. And that hybrid ecosystem, our on-premises, personally owned, managed, and administrated data center, or maybe in a co-location that we lease space from and then we own and manage and administrate from there, and Microsoft's data center, in this case is in Azure. Obviously, a hybrid cloud environment could be the Google Cloud Platform or Amazon Web Services, or any combination of them, as long as they're still meeting our minimum requirement of being an ecosystem that is cohesively managed as a single topology. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.